Welcome back to another episode of From the Field. After being able to do this for many months, I have been a bit rusty because I've just come back from my own holiday and I forgot to click the loop button. So we went live a little bit earlier, and that also why you had me awkwardly, quickly running around going, "Oh my god, this is not how things are supposed to start." But that's all good. We're off to a fun start. But that is how I like my life. So anyway. I'm Casey, your host. I have been away. I went to Japan for a little while, came back, and as you can tell, we are a bit rusty. I have my co-host here, Natalia. What you should have been yelling at me, going, "What is happening?" If you want to introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Hi everyone again, my name is Natalia. I'm a solution architect here at AWS based in Auckland, and good to be back on the show.
Awesome. And we also got esteemed guest Ratan, what has been on our show a couple of times. Last year, you was the brain behind our show, what was How to Be a Network Ninja, I believe it was. What had about 4 shows, what did awesomely as well. You are back because you have organized another masterclass, which is on building Gen AI with Amazon Bedrock. Do you want to introduce yourself and give a bit of an idea on what to expect through this session and also for the next couple sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be back, team, on the show. I remember, I think it's been more than 2 years, almost 3, that we started this show with few of us together, and we thought that, hey, let's how do we bring New Zealand local stories for our customers? Some of the insights that we are learning from the field. And that's really the purpose again here. In this case, we are working day in, day out with customers on generative AI use cases. And one of the things that I'm learning is that there's this bit of novelty that exists right now around generative AI, that you have to be probably a PhD grad in data science to do generative AI, or you need to have a master's degree in generative data scientist or machine learning to build generative AI apps. And that's the thing that we want to address through this series, that's really not the case, especially with Amazon Bedrock, the way we have approached and built the platform. We're trying to, again, the whole focus is that how do we democratize generative AI? How do we make it easier for any developer, any builder to build generative AI powered applications, or integrate generative AI capabilities into their existing applications? So that's how the concept of the series came, that how do we make it easier for every developer to understand generative AI? They don't have to have a huge degree in data scientist or machine learning to start to leverage this capability. So through next, what I would say, 3 or 4 sessions that we have lined up right now, and we will be adding more sessions as we go. We plan to, today, for example, we'll cover how to get started. So really basic stuff, introduction to Amazon Bedrock, how do you set up your local development environment. So say you're a Python developer, how do you start to use Boto 3 or Amazon Bedrock SDK to connect to foundation models? And then the next session is where we really start to dive deeper into very specific topics. So for example, the next one we will have is where we go and look into a RAG use case. Again, a very technical term there, but essentially it stands for retrieval augmented generation. One of the very common use cases that we are seeing is that where organizations are trying to build generative AI applications using their organization's data. So we will dive deeper into that. We'll have speakers who are really deep into that subject, talking about it. And the third that we have is about Party Rock, Amazon Party Rock, again, an application that we have built to further make it really simple for non-technical users to leverage generative AI capability. So that's a really high-level overview of how and why we thought about putting these shows and what we are planning to cover.
Awesome. Sounds fun. And someone has mentioned, Green No, has mentioned that, that's the opposite of what Gen A is generally supposed to be or anything like that, which is, it can get complex, but like anything, there's shades of gray to it. Natalia, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I just like that idea that we actually kind of demystifying and democratizing that opportunity for developers to go and start. And you don't really need to know a lot to start with, and that's the whole idea of the series.
And someone has also mentioned that there's the first AI virus that exploits like GenAI and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. But that is the world we live in. As always, keep your head on a swivel, make sure we don't click the wrong links and all of that fun stuff that we've been involved with. But why don't we kick along into this? So, what is a typical GenAI architecture look like?
Yeah, so let me know if you can see my screen right now,
Oh.
Casey, if that's
Yep. Oh, my mouse. There we go. Boom.
awesome. So look, just again, with the purpose of really keeping it basic, there could be very complex and specific architectures for some use cases. But essentially, what a generative AI architecture looks like is you have, say, a single page application, a customer-facing app or internal-facing app, which is calling an API. Again, I'm using a very typical modern application architecture. That API is being served by a microservice. It could be a Lambda function. It could be containers running on ECS or EKS or EC2, for example. And that's where all the connectivity to a foundation model is happening. So this is the place where you actually put the code, and we will go into the code in a moment, where you talk to a foundation model, send a request. All requests to a foundation model for anybody new to generative AI is through what we call prompts. So prompts are really the way you are coding this computer. If you want to call foundation model is a modern computer, the way it understands the instruction is you send a prompt, and in response to that prompt, it replies you with a bunch of things. There could be scenarios where, as I said, RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where you want to send additional context to foundation model to make sure that it is responding or keeping the response aligned with your organizational information. So foundation models are trained on internet data, so they don't know any of the information that your organization may have. And this is where you can actually supplement the prompt or the request going to foundation model with the information from your own database. And this could be structured information, unstructured information. Again, this is a topic which we will dive really deeper into the next show that we have. So that's a very high level what an application architecture with generative AI looks like. Again, there are lots of other aspects that how do you make sure that you have capabilities to evaluate different models, because again, because of the non-deterministic nature of the outputs that foundation model provides you, there is a lot of experimentation that goes when we are building generative AI application. So you need to have the ability to actually test through multiple large language models and make sure that you're comfortable with the response. Then security is a huge thing. How do you make sure that the data that you have from your organization isn't used for training by large language model providers? And so even though the architecture looks very simple, what I'm trying to say here is that there are few additional things that you as a developer have to think about, and this is where Amazon Bedrock comes into play. This is what we are trying to simplify through Amazon Bedrock. So with that, I want to pass it on to Natalia, because she has got Amazon Bedrock open, and probably she can take you through some of the core capabilities of Amazon Bedrock and what it offers to building generative AI application. And then I'll be back to actually take into a little bit of a code and show you that how you actually integrate with foundation model in your code.
Cool. Thank you, Ratan. Casey, if you don't mind to bring up my screen. Cool.
Done.
Awesome. So thank you. As Ratan mentioned, there are only a few things you need to do to actually start building GenAI application. And the first thing you need to do is enable access to the models. So to do so, let's have a look. Obviously, you need AWS account. And once you log in into your AWS console, let's go and find the Bedrock. So you can either use search bar to navigate to Amazon Bedrock. Another option is go into the services here, and under machine learning, that would be Amazon Bedrock. To do this operation only need to be done once for every new account or every new region you're going to use Amazon Bedrock. And to get access to the models, because by default there are no access to any of the models. Obviously, I did play around with my account before, so I have some access granted here already. But you would need to go into this model access part and go and say manage model access. Here you can select which model you want to get access to. You can select one or you can select all of them. And then don't forget to save the changes, because I know a couple of people have been caught on this. And as you can see, you get access pretty much straight away. Sometimes it can take a minute or so, but you will see this nice green tick. Nice to see a green tick. And that's pretty much how you set it up to be able to communicate with these models.
Natalia, is there any restrictions on who can get access to those models?
Yeah, so as you can imagine with Amazon, for security for us is top priority. So if you work with AWS before, you are aware of IAM permissions. So you need to have an appropriate level of permission to get access to the models. If you don't have this permission, you need to talk to your administrator and organization who can provide permission for you to either get access to the model, like activate access, or actually access in a particular model which is defined within your organization policies. Ratan, do you want to add anything here? Because you mentioned on security portion before.
Yeah, so look, this is a very important topic. Again, everything every option that Bedrock presents you, you need to have IAM permissions to be able to call those features. What we imagine in a large enterprise setting, at least, we will have a situation where somebody with admin rights to Amazon Bedrock will control which models are accessible to which teams. It's likely that we'll see some really large models, like for example Claude 3 Opus, being available to only a few set of users, which is not available in Sydney region at the moment. But so there will be somebody making a call, but after evaluating these models, understanding their capabilities, reading the end user licensing agreement. If you click on the link on the right side, Natalia, so for every model, there are these end user licensing agreements that you can read through and understand their terms of service. And then after that, somebody with the administrative privilege will enable these models and allow different teams to have access to them. One of the things that I want to highlight here again about security is that when we have worked with the model providers on these models, we have understand that we have taken a copy of a model and deployed it inside AWS account, which is fully managed by Amazon Bedrock service team. So model providers have absolutely no access to any of the interaction that is happening with the model, which means that your organization data is safe. Yeah, so that's one of the very important things that we want to highlight from when it comes to security. You're not talking to the model provider or sending data to the model provider at all. In every case where you're accessing AWS, Amazon Bedrock, all interaction is happening with the model, which is deployed inside Amazon Bedrock Teams managed AWS account.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a very good point. And as Ratan mentioned, we do have this end user license agreement for each model available on this page, for example. So if you have particular use case where you want to use particular model in your GenAI application, we recommend you to go and read through the terms and conditions. And for some models, like for example, Titan, which is our models, you will have more like links to our other terms and conditions, but for third-party models, it tend to be quite a sophisticated document with a lot of these terms and conditions actually listed all the way here.
We do have a question which is around, is there security within the model? Like, can you control what users can ask the model or get information back?
For Ratan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to understand a little bit more about that question. so from a security point of view, there are two key things that matters is that what data that you're sending and all of that data is sitting inside Amazon Bedrock's account. We're not storing any information. It just the call is happening to that model and you get a response. The other thing from a security point of view, I'm not sure if it is answering that question specifically, but if you're interested in this, is that Amazon Bedrock supports private link, which means that if you want to make sure that none of your data is traversing over the internet as you talk to Amazon Bedrock, you can achieve that by leveraging Amazon or AWS private link.
So what I believe that, Tuma, is user-based permissions. So if you have confidential data within the model, can you actually restrict that from being served to specific users?
So okay, can I say something here? So from model point of view, like we have our models, we have some models from third-party providers. All providers nowadays on the market trying to work on making sure that models actually behave appropriately. It doesn't create any harmful content. While the model is trained, it's trained on a lot of data. So, and it's usually trained on publicly available data. So model by itself does not have your, private information. You can build application with providing your own proprietary data to the model. But this will be the user who is asking the question and getting access to the data.
Yeah.
So if, yep.
Yeah, just to add to that, and this is a question that I'm now looking into the chat window. I wasn't referring to the chat. So the one of the features that Natalia will dive into later is what we call guardrails. So you can leverage some of that capability to actually put a stop in terms of what sort of questions that models should be responding to or not. So that's something that we can touch on in a moment.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So yes, so once you get access to the model, pretty much you start building your application, but there are a few things I want to show you around in the console while we're still in console, just to kind of get you familiar with. So first of all, obviously, you can select which particular region you are running Bedrock in. And if you are part of the company which has some kind of data residence and don't want your data to travel between different countries, we have an options now available. For example, for folks which is located in Australia and New Zealand, we do have Bedrock in Sydney now. And this is kind of where you can change which region you're using. Another thing, if you never play with any of the models before you actually jumping into your ID and trying to build application, one of the easiest way to test the model and see how it's kind of performing is go into the playground. So we do have, for example, text and chat playground. The difference would be if model keep the history of the conversation or not. For chat, obviously, like playground will keep the history. So when you ask the next question, the previous conversation will be taken into account. And here you can select the model. For example, let's do Anthropic. And I need to scroll down to apply it. And what another feature of Playground, you actually can compare a couple of models. So let's go with the second Anthropic model and test something. Something like X. Okay, I cannot type. Explain GenAI to a 5-year-old. So what's interesting to see here is you will be able to compare what models come up with and how
Natalia,
quickly come up with. Yes?
Do you want to go in your full screen mode? So it's probably easier to see that response.
I might do it like that, if it works.
Yeah, okay, sure.
So I don't know if you see, the Claude 3 Haiku actually provided response much faster than the Sonnet. So if latency one of your parameters you're interested in, you can compare models not just on output, the actual output, but how quickly they provide that output. And also you can see here in the metrics what's output, what latency, how many input tokens, how many output tokens, etc. And that's pretty much a place where you can go and play around with the new model you haven't tried before. And another feature I want to show before we actually jump into the IDE and see how you use the model to create GenAI application is providers here. Cool thing here is this page provides you a list of all providers available in particular region you're looking into. For example, for Sydney, we have Amazon, Anthropic, Cohere, and Mistral. And on top of providing cards for each model, like what's characteristics of a model, what it can do, what's parameters, it gives you that example of the API request, so pretty much in what format model expect to see information from you. And that's one of the easiest way to find it. Obviously, we do have documentation, but it is available for you here in console as well. So if you go into the Anthropic model, for example, as you can see, API request looks quite different to Titan models. For example, Anthropic Claude 3 models are multimodal models, so they accept image as a parameter. And here you can see how it's expected to see the image. For example, you can see it's supposed to be base 64 encoded. And it's an easy way to kind of start building application when you trying to figure out what exactly model expecting. That's one of the place where you can find this information, and you can copy that code and transfer it to your IDE or etc.
I was actually just doing this 2 days ago. Another good place is that we have quite a few examples in the examples GitHub. So if you do a quick Google for AWS GitHub Bedrock examples, that's a good place to research some of the code.
Yeah, we do have examples in the console as well, but they are more like specific examples. If you cannot come up with your own question, what to ask the model, you do have examples here, which can be open in a playground, and then you can kind of have a chat with one of the pre-curated example. One thing I wanted to touch on and forgot, and going back to playground, bring me my memory, is there are configurations which is kind of quite standard across a lot of models, but there are some differences between the models. But if you trying to generate some kind of business document, so you don't need a lot of creativity, you probably want to turn the temperature down, so you can use it here in console, but you also can do it in your API call. But if you creating a poem or children's story, you might change the temperature to 1 to make sure that model have high level of creativity. Another configuration here is top P, which is how, again, it's about creativity and diversity of model outcome. How model operates, it generates the next probable word in the sequence. So based on previous context, based on beginning of the sentence, what is the most likely word which is going to be here. So it goes through a list of words and it calculates probability for all of them. And by shifting that top P parameter, you can define if model is going to provide, say, 90% probability words only, or you want to include a higher range of the words. And another parameter here is length of outcome. So obviously, depending on what you expect a model to generate for you, if you're expecting 1 or 2 sentences, that's fine. You probably can provide a kind of limit the length. But if you want to create a longer story, or you're trying to create some kind of longer document, then probably you need to adjust the length of output to provide, longer output for you. But yeah,
essentially, in a nutshell, Natalia, what we're trying to say, if you want to really simplify that for the dev community, is if you can use those 2 parameters, which are consistently available across all models, to decide that how repeatably have a consistent same output you want from a request and to a model. So by keeping the temperature to really low, you're saying that don't be super creative, just give me the same reply every time, basically. And if you want to change that because of based upon a use case, hey, you are building an application where you are allowing kids to imagine new stories or new types of images or graphics, you want to keep that really high, because again, you want to just let the model come up with creative outputs all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. But even if you say, I want the same outcome all the time, there are no guarantee because it's still not deterministic outcome of the model. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to kind of show just to start with. Obviously, we have much more. And if we have time in the end, I'll show a couple of things. But I want to pass it over to Ratan so he can share how you actually can do it in your development environment.
Yeah, sure. Look, before we do that, probably worth to take some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah,
So
definitely. There's a good
yes,
conversation happening.
I like it. I like it. So there's a question about how do you train it on your own confidential data? So that's a good question. We do have a feature in AWS, Amazon Bedrock, which allows you to fine tune an existing model with your own organizational data and then deploy it just for your own use case. So again, talking about security, this fine tuned model is only and only available to you, and you control that which users within your organization will have access to that fine-tuned model. So that's a capability that Amazon Bedrock offers you. There's question about RAG and knowledge bases, and someone has already answered that, which is great. That yes, it is coming. It's a topic that we have in our next session. So there was another one, which is I have an Oracle background, so we are looking at using Oracle vector database for RAG. Not sure if this is applicable. Look, I'm not an Oracle database expert, so I'm not quite sure whether Oracle supports vector DB. But on AWS, you have quite a number of choices. For example, a lot of our customers are using Amazon OpenSearch as a vector store. We are also seeing customers using Postgres IDS, which has a plugin for vector database, so you can use that. Then beyond all of that, we do have a number of vector databases available through our marketplace. So for example, you can actually subscribe to Pinecone. And talking about Pinecone, I do have a Pinecone here. Which my daughter brought for me other day, and I was like, hey, that's a good vector database reference. So so I kept it here. So yes, so you do have Pinecone available through marketplace. So there are a bunch of different options.
Great segue there into the Pinecone.
Yes,
I love it.
I stole it. I stole it from my 10-year-old daughter's room. And okay, cool. So now let's jump into enough of talking. Let's get into the developer bit. That how do we actually integrate with Amazon Bedrock? So if you can bring my screen, I do have few slides to just simplify the messaging, and then I will jump into the code as well. So just bear with me for a moment.
Yep, your screen's up.
Awesome. Look, so first I want to touch on how do you invoke models with in Amazon Bedrock. So I'm using Python as an example. Bedrock supports PHP, Java, bunch of other languages. And I will share you the links to the documentation. But essentially, the first thing that you do is you create a Bedrock client. So in this case, Bedrock. Python SDK is called Boto 3. So I'm using that, and I'm creating a Bedrock client. That's it. The second is where now I'm actually setting an instruction that I want to send to the foundation model. So as we discussed, it is typically called prompt. So I'm saying that, hey, explain generative AI to a 10-year-old. Then what I'm doing is that we are setting the model ID. And on AWS documentation, again, we'll show you that where you can find the identifier for each model. After that, what we are doing is that we're saying that set a request that we want to send to the model. And the request is going to contain few of these things. So we will have the prompt, the instruction that it needs, and then we will also have other model specific parameters. So for example, temperature, top P, some of the things that Natalia was showing. And this is a very important aspect, as Natalia was showing, that you do have an ability to actually go and pick and choose which information that you want to send to a model. So you need to pay attention to this aspect, that what a model requires, and are you sending those parameters to it? Because different model providers have slightly different expectations and the attributes that they seek. So this is an area that you need to pay attention. The third thing is, now we are actually calling Bedrock client, an invoke model, to and pass the model ID. So if I can pick my pen here, you can see that I'm setting the model ID here, and then I send the request that I want to send to my model. So this is the request, which has the actual prompt that I want to send to the model. And it also has things like temperature and top P and top K. In this particular case, I'm choosing to keep it like, hey, let's not be super creative. Let's just stay simple. And then this response that I get is the thing to understand here is that this is the response that we are getting from Bedrock. So Bedrock SDK has sent us a response. Now, inside that response, you need to get the response that we have received from the foundation model that is wrapped around, that is packaged inside this Bedrock response. And the way to, irrespective of which model you're using, the way to get that response is by reading the body object that comes in the response, in the Bedrock response. So always the way to get that will be this. And once you have the response from the foundation model, you can then parse it in whichever way you want to. Again, depending on which model you're using, the foundation model response will have certain different attributes, and we'll have few slides to show you that how you can parse it based upon the model. So enough of
Ratan,
sure.
there is a quick question. Does the model support streaming?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It does support. So I'm actually, in this case, I'm just using invoke model. There is another endpoint for streaming, which we can talk through, show you share the documentation.
Awesome.
Okay, so now jumping into the code. So let's have a look. Okay, so let me know if you can see my Visual Studio Code.
Yep, we could see
Again,
ourselves for a little while, so that was always exciting.
yes. Okay, brilliant. So it's no different to what I was showing in the slideshow. So I'm importing Bodo 3. I'm also importing JSON because I want to set some of those attributes and send a JSON payload. Then I create a Bodo 3 client here. So setting the service name as Bodo Bedrock runtime. Then the first thing that I do here is that, hey, what's the instruction and what's the context? And this is the place, if you're using a RAG use case, those viewers who are interested in RAG, this is the place where you are going to add additional context. So you may have a piece of code here which is going and talking to your knowledge base and pulling that information, searching through vector database, and then augmenting all of that inside the prompt. Okay. And prompt engineering plays a massive role in how you elicit the response from the foundation model. So after that, you set the model ID. In this case, I'm using Mistral. And then once you have decided the model ID, specific to that model, you need to check the documentation as Natalia was showing. The per provider, there are certain things that you need to set. Mistral is pretty simple. All that it expects is prompt, and that's it. So that's one of the reasons I chose it to actually demonstrate. I do have some code for Claude and Llama as well, which we can take a look at in a moment. But here I'm setting the prompt, and then I'm all set to actually invoke the foundation model. Just two parameters that I need to send here in this case is the model ID and actual request that I want to send, which is just prompt. Then I have got a couple of print statements here to actually show you the theory that I just covered in a moment ago, which is that how you get a response from Bedrock, and inside that response, you have the response from the foundation model. So let's take a quick look at it as I run this code. So
So while you run that code, we do have a question from Devito about, can you set max tokens?
absolutely, yeah. So all of that will be a part of the request that goes to the model. You know,
So from that, only certain models support max tokens, or do all models support it?
Again, we suggest that you look at the model specific documentation, which I think if I bring it here, say Claude 3 text generation, um, or just one second, I think this is a better one. So in case of Mistral, the request, as I was saying, I'm currently only setting the prompts. You do have an option to actually set max tokens. You have an option to set the temperature, top P, top K of that. For Meta Llama models, it expects these four things. So max generation length, so as you can see that they have a different naming convention for the same thing. So here they're calling it max gen length. So this is the number of the tokens that you expect in the output, maximum tokens.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure that answers the question.
Perfect. Okay, so let's back in the code here, and I wanted to help understand a little bit about that because I've seen quite a number of questions have come to us from our customers that how do we understand the Bedrock response versus the model response. So now I run the code, and I want to show only the response that I get from Bedrock. So this is the response that Bedrock API is basically sending us. So every request has a request ID. It says that, hey, HTTP status code is 200, and all of those interesting, useful things. It also provides certain things like, hey, what was the invocation latency? So how long it took. What was the output token count? Some of these things are important when you are talking about the cost side of things. What was the input token count, which is 10, output token count 149. And then here is a mysterious bit here that it's a streaming body object, and this is where the actual response from the foundation model is stored. And this is what we will do next, which is actually have a read of that body parameter from the Bedrock response. So if I print that now, you will see that I don't get anything about what Bedrock said. I get the actual response from Mistral model, this is the generated text. It comes inside this in a certain structure that we were talking earlier, and it also suggests certain other parameters that why it stopped and so on. So if I want to specifically read that bit, then I go and you can parse this information in a JSON viewer or whichever tool that you use. So if I want to actually get just the generation, nothing else, then I put that code, which is it's an outputs array, and I want to read the first element of that array. And the text bit is what I'm interested in. So as you can see, I have a nice, really tidy response talking about the black holes and explaining it to a 10-year-old. So yeah, so that's really what the code looks like and how you navigate. Again, going back to the model specific request and response, do take a look at these documentation. I do have certain QR code that I can share in a moment, where you can bookmark these links. But for on this page, you have access to not only the request but also the response format. That what does the response look like for each and every model? So we were looking at the example of the Mistral for a moment. As you can see, that this is exactly what we got when we ran the code, an array of outputs. Okay, so back to, I think I've already covered this, that this is just showing you a little bit of an overview of If you are calling Claude, again, Claude has a specific way in which it gives you the output. It comes inside the content element. If you use Mistral, we just saw it. If you use Llama, it goes into generation. So talking about the useful links, these are a couple of useful links that I would say if you have got your phone, if you want to QR code, scan the QR code, these are really good places to bookmark. And the first one is where you have access to a bunch of application architecture patterns for generative AI application, really basic, and also touching on RAG use cases. Then the next one, we have dived deeper into that already, which is all the inference parameters that specific models expects. And the last one is where you've got model specific example code. Casey was already mentioning we do have GitHub repo where you have a lot of code examples, but this one is where you have model specific code examples in a documentation and also explaining that. So I think we've covered enough about how do you actually use Boto 3 SDK to interact with Amazon Bedrock. I believe it's probably good to touch a little bit on some of the other features and capabilities that Amazon Bedrock provides you when it comes to building generative AI application. And for that, I'll pass it on to Natalia.
Cool. Thank you, Ratan. Casey, if you can share my screen again.
Yep.
Awesome. So one of the things I want to show you is to what Ratan was just showing to you about when you invoke the model, it comes back with some responses. You actually can log these responses. So by default, the model invocation login is turned off, and we do not log as AWS your responses, like what you send to the model, what model sent back to you. This is your private information, and it's up to you if you want to log it and keep it for yourself for purposes. And it can be very useful because you can, by logging it, you actually can create a data set and then kind of experiment with the models more. Just want to show it how it looks like when you enable this login. So you have an option of what exactly you want to log, like text, images, and embeddings, and where you want to log it. You can choose between S3 or CloudWatch or both. And then obviously you have to specify S3 location and CloudLog group name. So when you have it in CloudWatch log, you have pretty much what model returned to you with a lot of parameters, what been passed into the model, what it returned. And one of the cool things is about input-output tokens, because that's how model been priced. So this is where, for example, you can get information from out of this logs file. Obviously, if you interacting with your application, you can get it in your application, but there is another place where you can get that information from. And if you use S3 bucket, for example, depending on what exactly you're sending, here I was experimenting with sending a picture to Claude model and asking what it does. So actually it saved the picture because I'm logging everything into S3 bucket, and it did save the JSON format. Once you download it, you can look at it and see what it looks like. Pretty much, again, very similar to what you see in CloudWatch, but if you want to keep it in S3 bucket and use it from there, it's your choice.
And just like with many of our logs, I always say Grafana does have a lot of templates that go off our default log structure. So that is a good place to start to get visualization of logs up and running very quickly. Ratan, you was mentioning something?
Yeah, I was just saying that you may see that your security team may have an interest in these logs. So it's a really good place to actually provide basically all communication that is happening to Bedrock. And if someone from your privacy team or responsible AI team, anybody who has focused on that, if they want to have access to that in a very meaningful way, you can build a dashboard on top of these logs and provide that visibility to them.
Definitely. Just to briefly touch on other features of Amazon Bedrock, which is available for you. Obviously, just to get started, you already got the information. You need to get model access, and then Ratan show how to actually start doing it in your IDE. But once you progressing through your experience with Bedrock and GenAI application, there are other things you might want, and they are available for you on Bedrock. So obviously things like knowledge bases and agents, which we're going to cover more in the next episode of this series, is very useful to build RAG solution with knowledge bases where you actually store your data, and agents can help you orchestrate and automate, and instead of just model generating something, you can actually take actions on what model generated. Another feature of Amazon Bedrock is model evaluation. Again, as Ratan mentioned, that you might want to experiment and see, with new model, how it performed for your particular use case. You have a couple of options for model evaluation. You have automatic model evaluation, where it can be, evaluation be done without any human involved. But depending on what metrics you're trying to, compare and trying to evaluate, sometimes you need to bring human, and you have an option of bring your own workforce, or we can provide some AWS managed team to help you with evaluating model. Also, we have, in the beginning of today's session, today's chat, somebody asked about security and how you limited on what models does, what model doesn't do for you. We have guardrails where you can set up some guardrails around what you allow model to do. For example, one of the example, if you kind of, bank or somebody who is providing something around financial services but don't want to provide investment advice, you can specify as a topic which is going to be denied by the model, for example. And if somebody asks a question and model generates something which is considered to be an investment model, it can be blocked at that level. We can block something like profanity words, PII information, etc. But also there are some filters about other things, such as hate, insults, and etc. So we do build that feature into Bedrock to help you build, safe generative AI application.
Yeah, and as you can see that you can test all of that. So you can set these guardrails, and then on the right-hand side, you can select a model and actually test it. That how does the model respond to these guardrails? And just from a process perspective, all the request as well as the response is now getting filtered through Amazon Bedrock guardrails. So it's not only what the request you're sending, but even the responses that you're receiving from foundation models are filtered through that.
Yes, and with guardrails, depending on what exactly kind of considered, the guardrails might actually stop from your request going to the model if it considered that, okay, that's not going to be appropriate. Like, for example, deny topic, if you ask for something deny topics, it might never even go to the model. It might be stopped at original request stage. But if it went to the model and model replies something inappropriate, it can be either stopped as a response to you, and you have kind of option to how you block the messaging, like what sort of appear as an output. Or if you're using something PII, you have an option of masking it instead of completely blocking the output from the model. So one of the feature which is probably not really for people who just starting on the journey, but very exciting for me, we do have a new feature which just appeared recently, where you can import the model. So somebody asked about, can I train my own model with my own information? And we have some customers who did fine-tuning some of the models before. Now we bring in functionality where you can import some of the models and run them on Bedrock and interact in the same way as you interacted with other models on Bedrock. Yeah, that's pretty much a very high level of functionality. Ratan, did I miss something?
No, I think that's a pretty good thing. And a team, everyone in the audience, we just wanted to let you know that this is all the features that exist. It's so much that it's very difficult to cover in a 1 hour session. So the way we are planning to do is that each episode will dive into specific topics. So next episode is going to be fully focused, as you mentioned, on knowledge bases, RAG use case, and that. Then we'll have sessions specific to guardrails and model evaluation. And we want to make sure that we are bringing expertise on individual topics, and we can then dive deeper into that. There are a few questions here, and I don't think we are how we are doing for the time, Casey.
We have 10 minutes. I was actually going to do a ask for any questions or anything like that, because now's the time to ask any of those questions that you have, and we'll see if we can answer them. And there is one around the import any model feature. Is that for only specific models, or like specific formats, etc.? Is there any limitations on that?
Yeah, there are definitely limitations. So its feature appeared just a week ago, something like that. So we do have a limitation about what you can bring. There are 3 models supported at the moment, which is, I think, Llama, Mistral, and Flanty 5 or something like that. I need to come back. I need to find that information, or you can find it in our documentation, what's exactly supported. And also, on top of it, it has to be in specific format. So it doesn't mean like, oh, I have a model here sitting, I can print. No, it doesn't work exactly like that. But we're moving in that direction where you can bring a model. So there are some limitations of which particular models, and it has to be in particular format, which is one of the Hugging Face formats, sort of. Yep. It's very specific and very niche, so probably doesn't.
So I will just jump in and say, like, whenever you have those very specific requirements there, do feel free to just reach out to your account SA. If you're already existing AWS customer, you will definitely have an account SA someplace. Or you can go to our contact us page and be like, I want more information on this, and you will get someone from AWS reaching out where you can get more information, specific information. You aren't alone in this. Like, it keeps us employed. So the more questions you ask, the better.
Yeah, and other resource, I don't know if team is familiar with, but if you want to bring in my screen, Casey, for a moment, Repost is a pretty good resource. I don't know how many of you have actually been here recently. So this is something that we built based upon all the internal knowledge-based discussions that we were having, and finally we decided that let's sanitize that and actually make this available to the community. So this is a pretty good place to actually also ask questions, get responses from not only AWS employees and experts, but also from the community. So that's a good place. Couple of other things that I wanted to just quickly touch on as we wrap up the session is if you want to really dive deeper into and understand generative AI and understand the capability that AWS offers, how you best architect with these AWS services. Do check out our Scale Builder site, and we have a generative AI learning plan for developers. I'm happy to probably share the QR code in a moment where you can, which if you want to bookmark, but it's one of the best resources that I've found in terms of actually introducing developers to different architecture patterns, and some of the things that we have shared today is also covered in that. The other thing is, as a next step, I will strongly recommend that there's no better way to actually learn than actually getting your hands dirty and building. So as a next step, I strongly encourage that take a time to actually build your first Hello World application or something, whatever you fancy. And a good place to get that started is building with Amazon Bedrock and LangChain Workshop. So it's a public facing content again, and it's if you look into the left menu, it goes into a lot of really structured content. So foundation level concept, basic pattern lab, and prompt engineering labs. So by the time you get through all these different labs, I'm pretty sure that you'll have built a huge amount of subject matter expertise on generative AI. So yeah, keep that in mind. That definitely encourage you to actually go look at some of these labs and just build something really basic, even if it is basically printing hello world, and because that's where every programming starts anyway, with hello world. So yeah, just to share the screen, if you want to scan the QR code, this is the QR code for GenAI learning plan for developers on our skill builder website. And then we have this is the QR code for building with Amazon Bedrock, a workshop that I was just covering in a moment.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that, Ratan. Yes. So what is next in 2 weeks? Same time in 2 weeks. What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, so as we have been talking about already, we will dive into the RAG application and how some of the best practices, how to design it, how do you think about it. So do tune in 22nd May, 1 to 2 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time on our Twitch channel.
Awesome. And if you have missed any of those QR codes, just go to the VOD that will be available directly after we finish the show. And obviously just use your camera to scan from there. I don't see any other questions popping up. So thank you, Ratan, as always. It's amazing to have you on the show. You always produce such good content. And also Natalia for also sharing how to do Bedrock and all of the good GenAI stuff through our console.
Yeah, and more importantly, thanks to the audience. I really appreciated that, how it was very interactive. There was all this conversation, audiences answering questions as well. So great, loved it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, I second that. Was one of the best audiences we've had. So yeah, thank you very much. And with that, I say thank you and Matiwa, and see you in 2 weeks.
Cheers, team.